You know that feeling when you're heading home after years away? That mix of excitement and dread churning in your stomach? Well, multiply that by 1,000, and you'll get close to how I felt driving up to my family's sprawling Victorian house on New Year's Eve. I'm Alex, and it had been 5 long years since I'd set foot in my childhood home. 5 years of building a life far away from the suffocating expectations and unspoken tensions that had driven me away. But here I was, lured back by promises of reconciliation and a fresh start. As I pulled into the driveway, the house loomed before me, its windows glowing with warm light. I could hear laughter and music spilling out onto the frosty lawn. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and made my way to the front door. The moment I crossed the threshold, I was engulfed in a whirlwind of hugs, kisses, and exclamations. Aunt Marge's perfume threatened to choke me, while Uncle Pete's hearty backslaps nearly knocked me off my feet. My parents hovered nearby, their smiles a bit too wide, their eyes a bit too bright. As the night wore on, I found myself relaxing. Maybe this wasn't so bad after all. The food was delicious, the conversation flowed easily, and even my teenage cousins seemed to have grown out of their awkward phase. But then I noticed something odd. Every time I mentioned my life away from home, a hush would fall over the room. Conversations would quickly shift, and someone would inevitably offer me another drink. It was subtle, but unmistakable. Just before midnight, I excused myself to use the bathroom. As I made my way upstairs, a floorboard creaked beneath my feet, and I froze. There, coming from behind a closed door, I heard hushed, urgent voices. "We can't keep this up forever," my mother's voice hissed. "We have to," my father replied. "For Alex's sake, for all our sakes." My heart pounding, I leaned closer to the door. Suddenly, a hand clamped down on my shoulder. I whirled around, coming face to face with my grandmother, her eyes wild with fear. "You shouldn't be up here, dear," she said, her grip tightening painfully. "Come, it's almost midnight." As we descended the stairs, the voices in my head grew louder. What were they hiding? What had they done? The family gathered in the living room, champagne flutes in hand. As the countdown began, I felt the walls closing in. 10, 9, 8. The smiling faces around me seemed to twist into grotesque masks. 7, 6, 5. The room spun, memories flashing before my eyes. 4, 3, 2. And then it hit me. The car accident that had killed my best friend the night before I left town. The one I'd been told was just that, an accident. Happy New Year. As cheers erupted around me, I locked eyes with my father. In that moment, I saw the truth. It hadn't been an accident at all, and they had covered it up. For me. The champagne flute slipped from my hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me. "Alex," my mother began, her voice trembling. "We did it to protect you. We had to." But it was too late. The floodgates had opened, and years of buried secrets came pouring out. Affairs, embezzlement, blackmail, our perfect family facade crumbled before my eyes. As accusations flew and tempers flared, I backed away, horrified. This wasn't reconciliation. This was a powder keg, and I had just lit the fuse. Suddenly, Uncle Pete lunged at my father, a letter opener glinting in his hand. Chaos erupted. Screams filled the air as family members turned on each other, years of resentment and betrayal boiling over. I stumbled backwards, my back hitting the front door. As I fumbled for the handle, my grandmother's voice cut through the mayhem. "You see, Alex?" she said, her eyes gleaming with a terrifying clarity. "This is why we need you, to keep the balance, to bear the weight of our sins." With a final look at the carnage unfolding before me, I wrenched open the door and ran into the cold night air. Behind me, I could hear sirens approaching, mixing with the sounds of struggle from inside the house. As I sped away, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, one thought echoed in my mind. Sometimes, the family secrets we uncover are better left buried. Because once they're out, there's no going back. And the price of truth? It might just be everything you hold dear. So the next time you're heading home for a family reunion, ask yourself, are you really ready for what you might find? Because some New Year's resolutions are better left unmade. And some families are better left in the past. I've always been a fitness junkie, but this year I was determined to take it to the next level. New Year's Day found me at Apex Fitness, the trendiest gym in the city. The The place was buzzing with resolutioners, all eager to shed their holiday weight. But I wasn't there for a casual workout. I was there to see him, Jake Steele, the fitness guru who'd taken social media by storm. Jake's workout videos had been my obsession for months. His chiseled physique and charismatic personality made every burpee and squat seem like a ticket to nirvana. When I heard he was offering personal training sessions at Apex, I knew I had to sign up. As I warmed up on the treadmill, my eyes kept darting to the door. Suddenly, there he was, Jake Steele in the flesh. He was even more impressive in person, his presence commanding attention from everyone in the room. I nearly stumbled off the treadmill, my heart racing faster than my feet. Jake started the session with his trademark intensity. "Push harder," he'd yell, his voice cutting through the pulsing music. "Your body is capable of more than you think." I felt myself pushing beyond my limits, desperate to impress him. After the grueling workout, Jake pulled me aside. "I see potential in you," he said, his piercing blue eyes locked on mine. "How would you like to join my special program? It's exclusive, intense, and guarantees rapid results." I couldn't believe my ears. Me, chosen for Jake's elite program? I nodded eagerly, barely listening as he outlined the details. All I could think about was transforming my body into a masterpiece like his. The program started the next day. It was brutal. Workouts that pushed me to the brink of collapse, strict diets that left me perpetually hungry. But I was seeing results, and that was all that mattered. As weeks passed, I noticed something odd. Other participants in the special program were disappearing. When I asked Jake about it, he'd smile and say they'd graduated to the next level. I tried to shake off my unease, focusing instead on my progress. One night, after a particularly intense session, Jake invited me to stay back. "You're ready for the final phase," he said, leading me to a hidden room in the gym's basement. The air was thick with an odd metallic scent. My heart nearly stopped when I saw what was inside. Rows of tanks filled with a viscous green liquid, each containing a human form. With a jolt, I recognized them, the missing participants. Jake's voice took on an eerie tone. "You wanted perfection, didn't you? This is how we achieve it. Your body, preserved at its peak, forever." I tried to run, but my muscles, the very ones I'd worked so hard to strengthen, betrayed me. As Jake's assistants grabbed me, I realized the horrifying truth. We weren't just building better bodies, we were becoming something else entirely. The last thing I saw before the green liquid engulfed me was Jake's face, his perfect smile now twisted into something inhuman. In my pursuit of the perfect body, I'd lost the very thing that made me human. As consciousness faded, one thought echoed in my mind. In the race for perfection, we'd crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And now, suspended in this green hell, I was the living, or perhaps unliving proof of how far we'd gone. You know that feeling when you're at a company party and the air is thick with ambition and cheap champagne? That was me, New Year's Eve, at Apex Industries' annual bash. I'm Jamie, and I'd been eyeing that corner office for months. Tonight was my chance to schmooze with the bigwigs and finally get that promotion. The party was in full swing, a sea of suits and cocktail dresses swirling around me. I'd just downed my third glass of bubbly when I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Mr. Blackwood, the CEO himself, his smile as sharp as his tailored suit. "Jamie, a word?" he said, gesturing towards a quiet corner. My heart raced as I followed him. This was it, my moment. I could almost taste the success. "We've been watching you, Jamie," Blackwood said, his voice low. "Your work has been impressive." I beamed, ready to accept whatever offer was coming my way. But what he said next made my blood run cold. "We have a special position opening up, one that requires discretion." He leaned in closer, his breath hot on my ear. "We need you to gather evidence against Sarah in accounting. She's been problematic." Sarah, my mentor, my friend, the woman who'd taken me under her wing when I first started. "But why?" I stammered. Blackwood's eyes hardened. "That's not your concern. Do this, and the VP position is yours. Refuse, and well?" He let the threat hang in the air. I felt sick. The room spun around me, faces blurring into a grotesque carnival of greed and betrayal. I need time to think," I managed to say. Blackwood nodded, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Of course. You have until midnight. Choose wisely." As he melted back into the crowd, I stumbled to the bathroom, my mind reeling. The face in the mirror looked alien, a stranger torn between ambition and loyalty. The party continued outside, the countdown to midnight growing louder. 10 minutes left to decide. I splashed water on my face, trying to clear my head. That's when I heard it, a muffled sob from the stall behind me. "Hello?" I called out. The door creaked open and there stood Sarah, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Jamie," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They're trying to frame me. I found something. Something big. They can't let it get out." My heart sank. Of course. Sarah, always the whistleblower, always fighting for what's right. The countdown outside reached fever pitch. 5, 4, 3. In that moment, I made my choice. I grabbed Sarah's hand and pulled her towards the exit. 2, 1. Happy New Year! The cheers erupted just as we burst through the doors into the cold night air. But our escape was short-lived. A black car screeched to a halt in front of us, and out stepped Blackwood, his face a mask of fury. "I'm disappointed, Jamie," he snarled. "You could have had it all." As his goons advanced on us, I realized with horror the true depth of the corruption we'd stumbled into. This wasn't just about cooking books or corporate espionage. This was something far darker. Sarah squeezed my hand, her eyes wide with fear. "Run," she hissed. And run we did into the night, leaving behind the glittering facade of success and ambition. As we fled, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You've made your choice. Now live with the consequences." The adrenaline coursing through my veins couldn't mask the chilling realization. My life as I knew it was over. In choosing integrity, I'd sign my own death warrant. So here's a word of advice from someone who learned it the hard way. Be careful what you wish for in the corporate world, because sometimes the price of that corner office is your soul. And in the game of ambition and greed, the only way to win is not to play at all. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a new life to build. One where success is measured not in promotions and paychecks, but in the ability to sleep at night. Because let me tell you, after what I've seen, sleep doesn't come easy anymore. Happy New Year, indeed. Hey there, I'm Jack. You know that feeling when you're down to your last few bucks and the world's weighing on your shoulders? That was me last New Year's Eve, standing in line at Pete's corner store, clutching a crumpled dollar bill like it was my last lifeline. The place was packed, everyone buzzing about the record-breaking lottery jackpot. $500 million. Can you believe it? I could practically taste the freedom that kind of money would bring. No more debt collectors, no more sleepless nights wondering how to make rent. Just one lucky ticket, that's all I needed. As I approached the counter, my palms were sweating. Old Pete gave me a knowing look. "The usual, Jack?" he asked, already reaching for a quick pick. I nodded, sliding my last dollar across the scratched countertop. As Pete printed the ticket, I couldn't help but notice the headline on a discarded newspaper. "Previous lottery winners still missing, authorities baffled." A chill ran down my spine, but I brushed it off. That wouldn't be me. I'd be smart, careful. Besides, what were the odds of winning anyway? The next day, I was nursing a hangover when my phone buzzed. A text from Pete, "Check your ticket, kid. You might want to come down here." My heart nearly stopped. With trembling hands, I dug out the crumpled ticket and checked the numbers. No way, no freaking way. I rushed to the store, my mind racing. As I burst through the door, the bell's jingle felt like an explosion in my head. Pete was there, grinning from ear to ear. "Congratulations, Jack," he beamed. "You've done it." As Pete walked me through the claim process, I couldn't shake this nagging feeling. Something about his smile seemed off. And was that a flicker of pity in his eyes? Weeks flew by in a blur of press conferences and legal meetings. I was on top of the world, but that newspaper headline kept creeping back into my thoughts. What had happened to those other winners? It was a month after my win when things got weird. I started noticing a black car following me. My phone calls were filled with strange static. And then the notes started appearing, cryptic messages warning me to enjoy it while it lasts. Paranoia set in. I hired security, installed cameras, but nothing helped. The feeling of being watched was constant, suffocating. Then came the night that changed everything. I woke up to a noise downstairs. As I crept down, my heart pounding, I saw a figure standing in my living room. I flicked on the lights, ready to confront the intruder, but what I saw made my blood run cold. It was Pete, but not the Pete I knew. This Pete had a wild look in his eyes, and in his hand was a strange glowing orb. "I'm sorry, Jack," he said, his voice eerily calm, "but it's time to pay the price." As he stepped towards me, the orb pulsing with an otherworldly light, the truth hit me like a freight train. The lottery wasn't just a game of chance, it was something far more sinister. Pete's face began to shift, morphing into something inhuman. "Your fortune," he hissed, "for your soul." I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. As Pete, or whatever he really was, reached for me, I realized the horrible truth. I hadn't won the lottery. I'd lost everything. So here's a word of advice from someone who learned it the hard way. Be careful what you wish for. Because sometimes the price of your dreams coming true is higher than you could ever imagine. And in the game of fortune and fate, the house always wins. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go. They're coming for me, and I don't have much time left. Just remember, the next time you're tempted to buy that lottery ticket, ask yourself if you're really prepared for what might happen if you win. Because in this game, losing might just be the best thing that could happen to you. Hey there, I'm Tom. You know that feeling when your past is weighing you down so much you can barely breathe? That was me last New Year's Eve, sitting in the back pew of St. Michael's Church, my heart pounding like a jackhammer. The place was packed, everyone dressed in their Sunday best, ready to start the new year with a clean slate. But me? I was there to unburden my soul, to finally confess the secret that had been eating me alive for the past year. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, Father James stood at the pulpit, his voice echoing through the vaulted ceiling. "Tonight, we offer you a chance for redemption," he said, his eyes scanning the congregation. "Step forward, confess your sins, and enter the new year absolved." One by one, people stood up, sharing their resolutions and minor transgressions. "I resolved to quit smoking," said Mrs. Johnson. "I confessed to gossiping about my neighbor," admitted Mr. Parker. But as each person spoke, I felt my secret growing heavier, threatening to crush me under its weight. Finally, with trembling legs, I stood up. The church fell silent, all eyes turning to me. I took a deep breath, my voice barely above a whisper as I began. I killed a man." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I could hear gasps and murmurs rippling through the crowd. "It was an accident," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "I was driving home late one night, and I hit someone. I panicked. I left him there." As I spoke, something strange started happening. People in the congregation began shifting uncomfortably, exchanging nervous glances. Father James's face had gone pale. Suddenly, a woman in the front row stood up, her voice shrill. "I know who you hit," she cried. "It was my husband. I've been covering for you all this time." Before I could process what was happening, chaos erupted. People were standing up left and right, shouting confessions and accusations. "I've been embezzling from the church fund," yelled the treasurer. "I'm having an affair with the mayor's wife," admitted the choir director. It was like a dam had broken, years of secrets and lies pouring out in a torrent of guilt and shame. In the midst of the pandemonium, I locked eyes with Father James. The look on his face made my blood run cold. It wasn't shock or disappointment I saw there. It was recognition. As if in slow motion, I watched him reach into his robes, pulling out a familiar-looking wallet, my victim's wallet, the one I thought I'd lost at the scene of the accident. "My son," Father James said, his voice cutting through the chaos, "I've been waiting for you to confess." The realization hit me like a freight train. Father James had known all along. He'd been there that night, not as a witness, but as an accomplice. As the clock struck midnight, marking the start of a new year, I realized with horror that my confession hadn't brought redemption. It had unleashed a nightmare. The church doors slammed shut, locked from the outside. Father James's eyes gleamed with an unholy light as he addressed the terrified congregation. "My children," he said, his voice no longer that of a kindly priest, "welcome to your judgment day." So here's a word of advice from someone who learned it the hard way. Be careful what you confess. Because sometimes, the person you're seeking absolution from is the very devil you've been running from all along. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a feeling this is going to be one hell of a New Year's service. And something tells me none of us are leaving this church the same way we came in. Happy New Year indeed. Hey there, I'm Jamie, and let me tell you, moving to Maple Grove seemed like a dream come true. Picture-perfect houses, manicured lawns, and the friendliest neighbors you could imagine. When I got the invite to the New Year's potluck, I was thrilled. Finally, a chance to really fit in. The night of the party, I nervously clutched my casserole dish as I approached the Johnsons' house. The place was buzzing with activity, laughter spilling out onto the porch. As I stepped inside, I was immediately enveloped in a sea of warm greetings and introductions. "Welcome to the neighborhood," beamed Sarah, the head of the neighborhood watch. Her smile was dazzling, but something in her eyes made me pause. It was intense, almost too intense. As the night wore on, I found myself relaxing. These people were great. Everyone seemed so supportive of each other's goals and resolutions for the new year. There was talk of fitness challenges, book clubs, even a neighborhood beautification project. Just as I was about to dig into dessert, a hush fell over the room. Sarah clinked her glass, calling for attention. "Friends," she began, her voice taking on an almost reverent tone, "it's time for our annual resolution ceremony." My curiosity piqued. I watched as each neighbor stood up and solemnly declared their New Year's resolution. But these weren't your typical lose 10 pounds or quit smoking goals. No, these were oddly specific, almost ritualistic promises. "I vow to maintain a lawn height of exactly 2.5 inches, declared one man. "I commit to baking exactly 47 cookies for each bake sale," said another. As each vow was made, Sarah would nod approvingly, making notes in a leather-bound book. The atmosphere grew tenser with each declaration, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Suddenly, all eyes turned to me. "Jamie," Sarah said, her smile now seeming more predatory than welcoming. "As our newest member, would you like to make a resolution?" My mouth went dry. I resolved to be a good neighbor?" I stammered. The room fell silent. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "I'm afraid that's not specific enough, dear. Perhaps you need some inspiration." Before I could respond, there was a commotion at the back of the room. Two burly men were dragging in a disheveled-looking woman I recognized as Mrs. Peterson from down the street. "Please," Mrs. Peterson sobbed. "I tried. I really did." Sarah's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Marjorie Peterson, you have failed to uphold your resolution to host exactly 3 dinner parties per month. The neighborhood watch finds you in violation of our community standards." My heart raced as I watched in horror. This couldn't be happening. It was like something out of a nightmare. As Mrs. Peterson was led away, still pleading, Sarah turned back to me, her smile never wavering. "Now then, Jamie, about that resolution." In that moment, I realized the terrible truth. This wasn't a neighborhood. It was a cult, hiding in plain sight behind picket fences and potlucks. And I was trapped. My mind raced, searching for an escape. But as I looked around the room, I saw only blank smiles and dead eyes. These people were long gone, lost to whatever madness had taken hold here. I resolved to, I began, my voice shaking. Just then, the lights flickered, plunging us into momentary darkness. In that split second of chaos, I made my move. I bolted for the door, ignoring the shouts behind me. As I ran down the street, my heart pounding in my ears, I could hear Sarah's voice carried on the wind. "You can run, Jamie, but you can't hide. In Maple Grove, everyone's a good neighbor, or else. So here's a word of advice from someone who learned it the hard way. Be careful what community you choose to call home, because sometimes the scariest monsters aren't hiding under your bed. They're living next door, hiding behind perfectly trimmed hedges and forced smiles. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a for sale sign to put up, because in this neighborhood, failing to keep your New Year's resolution isn't just disappointing, it's deadly." Hey there, I'm Mia, and let me tell you, I was so ready for a change this New Year's. You know that feeling when you're scrolling through social media and everyone seems to have their life together except you? Yeah, that was me. So when I stumbled across this online course called New Year, New You, Unlock Your Potential, I thought, why not? Little did I know, I was about to embark on a journey that would shake me to my very core. The course started innocently enough. Our instructor, Dr. Evelyn Cross, was charismatic and inspiring. Her soothing voice guided us through meditation exercises and self-reflection tasks. I found myself opening up in ways I never had before, sharing my deepest insecurities with strangers in our virtual classroom. As weeks passed, the assignments grew more intense. We were encouraged to cut ties with negative influences in our lives. Friends, family, anyone who didn't support our journey. At first, I hesitated, but Dr. Cross's words were so convincing. "You can't grow if you're tethered to the past," she'd say, her eyes seeming to pierce right through the screen. Then came the trust exercises. We were paired up and asked to share our darkest secrets. I spilled everything to my partner, a guy named Tom. It felt liberating, cathartic even. But when Tom's turn came, his confession chilled me to the bone. He spoke of violent urges, of fantasies that made my skin crawl. And yet, Dr. Cross praised his honesty, encouraging him to explore those feelings further. That's when the red flags started waving furiously. I began to notice subtle changes in my classmates. Their eyes seemed hollow during video calls, their voices monotone as they parroted Dr. Cross's teachings. And the course material, it was shifting from self-help to something far more sinister. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to do some digging on Dr. Cross. What I found made my blood run cold. Reports of a cult leader with a similar name, accusations of brainwashing, even links to mysterious disappearances. My heart raced as I realized the trap I'd willingly walked into. I tried to warn the others, but my access to the group chat was suddenly revoked. Panic set in as I realized how much personal information I'd shared, how vulnerable I'd made myself. Just then, my screen flickered, and Dr. Cross's face appeared. Her serene smile now seemed menacing. "Mia, Mia, Mia," she cooed. "I had such high hopes for you, but it seems you're not ready to fully commit to your transformation." I scrambled to close the laptop, but her voice continued, now coming from my phone, my tablet, every device in my home. "You can't escape, Mia. You're already one of us. You just don't know it yet." As her words echoed around me, I caught my reflection in the mirror. For a split second, I swear I saw someone else staring back, someone with Dr. Cross's eyes. I blinked and my own terrified face returned. But the damage was done. The seed of doubt had been planted. How much of me was still me? So here's a word of advice from someone who barely escaped the rabbit hole. Be careful what you sign up for in the name of self-improvement, because sometimes the person you're trying to become is someone else's carefully crafted creation. As for me, I'm off the grid now, trying to piece together my fractured sense of self. But I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched, that Dr. Cross is still out there waiting for me to slip up. And the scariest part, a small voice in the back of my mind still wonders if I should go back, if I'm missing out on my true potential. Because that's the true horror of psychological manipulation. Even when you know it's happening, a part of you still wants to believe. Sweet dreams, and remember, the next time you're tempted by promises of a new you, ask yourself, at what cost? You know that feeling when you're sitting in a cozy coffee shop, the aroma of freshly ground beans wafting through the air, and everyone around you is scribbling away in their journals? That's where I found myself on New Year's Eve, surrounded by the hopeful energy of people penning their resolutions for the coming year. I'm Emma, and I've always had a knack for organization and goal setting. It's why I started my business as a resolution planner. People come to me when they need help turning their vague aspirations into concrete, achievable goals. I take pride in my work, meticulously crafting plans that lead my clients to success. As I sipped my latte, a nervous-looking woman approached my table. "Are you the resolution planner?" she asked timidly. I nodded, gesturing for her to sit. This was Sarah, my first client of the day. "I want to travel more," Sarah said, fidgeting with her scarf. "But I'm scared of flying." I leaned in, my voice soothing. "Fear not, Sarah. We'll start small. How about a road trip to a neighboring state?" Her eyes lit up, and I felt that familiar rush of satisfaction. As we chatted, I jotted down notes, weaving her desires into a tapestry of carefully planned steps. Throughout the day, more clients came and went. There was Mark, the aspiring writer who needed a push to finish his novel, and Lisa, determined to climb the corporate ladder. Each time I listened intently, offering advice and crafting personalized plans. As the cafe began to empty, my final client arrived. James, a fitness enthusiast looking to push his limits. "I want to run a marathon," he declared. I smiled, already formulating a plan. "Have you considered ultra-marathons?" I suggested, my pen poised over the paper. Hours later, as I packed up my things, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. My clients left with their neatly written plans, eager to embark on their journeys of self-improvement. Little did they know, I had woven something sinister into each of their resolutions. Sarah's road trip? I'd subtly suggested a route that would take her through a notoriously dangerous part of the country. Mark's novel? The plot I'd helped him develop was eerily similar to an unsolved crime in our city. Lisa's career goals? They involved befriending a colleague I knew to be involved in corporate espionage. And James? His ultramarathon training would push him to the brink of physical collapse. You might wonder why I do this. The truth is, I feed on chaos. Each carefully orchestrated disaster fuels my existence. I'm not human, you see. I'm something else. Something that thrives on the misery and misfortune of others. As I stepped out into the chilly night air, I felt a thrill of anticipation. Soon, very soon, the consequences of my planning would unfold. And as each of my clients faced their personalized nightmare, I would grow stronger. So the next time you're struggling with your New Year's resolutions, think twice before seeking help. Because you never know who or what might be guiding your hand as you plan your future. After all, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I'm the architect of that road, disguised as a friendly face in a cozy coffee shop, waiting to help you plan your demise. Sweet dreams, and Happy New Year. Hey there, I'm Zoe, and let me tell you, being an influencer isn't all glamour and free stuff. It's a cutthroat world out there, and staying relevant, that's the real challenge. So when New Year's rolled around, I knew I had to come up with something big. Something that would make me stand out in the sea of New Year, New Me posts flooding everyone's feeds. That's when it hit me. The Ultimate Transformation Challenge. 31 days, 31 tasks, each designed to push participants out of their comfort zones and into a better version of themselves. I spent weeks crafting the perfect mix of physical challenges, mental exercises, and social experiments. It was going to be epic. I launched the challenge on New Year's Day, and boom, it went viral overnight. My follower count skyrocketed, and #Ultimate Transformation was trending worldwide. I was on top of the world, watching thousands of people eagerly tackling each day's task. Day 1 was simple, a 5 a.m. wake-up call and a cold shower. Easy enough, right? But then came the messages. Zoe, I slipped in the shower and broke my arm. My power went out at 4:59 a.m. Is that a sign? I brushed it off as coincidences. After all, accidents happen. As the days progressed, so did the intensity of the challenges. Day 7, face your fears. Day 15, radical honesty. Day 23, physical limits. With each passing day, my inbox filled with more disturbing messages. Participants reported strange occurrences, unexplainable accidents, even disappearances. I tried to ignore the growing unease in the pit of my stomach. The challenge was a success, wasn't it? My followers were doubling, tripling. Brands were clamoring to sponsor me. This was everything I'd ever wanted. But then came day 30. Trustful. The task was to post a video of yourself falling backwards, trusting that someone would catch you. Simple, right? Wrong. My phone blew up with notifications. Videos of people falling, no one there to catch them. Screams cut short, sickening thuds. I stared at my screen in horror, my hands shaking. What had I done? This couldn't be real. It had to be an elaborate prank. But deep down I knew. Somehow, someway, my challenge had taken on a life of its own. As day 31 dawned, the final day, I sat in my apartment, paralyzed with fear. The last task was supposed to be a celebration, a reflection on the month's journey. Instead, I found myself staring at a single, cryptic message on my phone. Congratulations, Zoe. You've completed the ultimate transformation. It's time for your final task. My blood ran cold as I realized the truth. I wasn't the creator of this challenge. I was just another pawn, another participant in something far bigger and more sinister than I could have ever imagined. The doorbell rang, making me jump out of my skin. With trembling hands, I opened the door. only to find an empty hallway. But there, on my doormat, lay a single envelope. Inside was a card with 2 words that made my heart stop: your turn. As I stood there, frozen in terror, I could hear the faint sound of my phone blowing up with notifications. No doubt my followers were eagerly awaiting the final task. Little did they know, the real challenge was just beginning. So here's a word of advice from someone who learned it the hard way. Be careful what you wish for in the pursuit of fame, because sometimes the price of going viral is higher than you could ever imagine. And in this game of likes and followers, you might just find yourself being the one who gets played. Hey there, I'm Alex. You know that feeling when you're standing outside a door, knowing that once you step through, your life might change forever? That's where I found myself on a chilly New Year's Day, staring at the faded sign of the Oakwood Community Center. I'd been clean for 6 months, but the holidays had been rough. Every family gathering, every festive commercial, they all screamed relapse to me. So when I heard about this New Year's resolution support group, I figured, why not? Maybe surrounding myself with other people trying to better themselves would help keep me on track. As I pushed open the heavy door, the musty smell of old books and coffee hit me. The room was already half full, a circle of folding chairs occupied by people who looked as nervous as I felt. But there, at the head of the circle, stood a man who exuded confidence. This had to be Dr. Reeves, the group leader I'd read about online. "Welcome," he said, his voice warm and inviting. "You're in the right place." I took a seat, my hands fidgeting in my lap. As more people filtered in, Dr. Reeves began the session. He had this way of speaking that made you feel like he was talking directly to you, even in a room full of people. "We're all here because we want to change," he said, his eyes scanning the room. "And change is possible. I'm living proof." He went on to share his own story of addiction and recovery. With each word, I felt myself relaxing. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. As weeks passed, I found myself looking forward to our meetings. Dr. Reeves always seemed to know exactly what to say to keep us motivated. He even offered one-on-one sessions for those who needed extra support. But then, things started to get weird. It was subtle at first, a comment here, a suggestion there. Dr. Reeves began talking about alternative therapies and mind-expanding substances that could help us overcome our addictions. Red flags went up in my mind, but I pushed them aside. After all, he was the expert, right? One night, after a particularly intense session, Dr. Reeves pulled me aside. "Alex," he said, his hand on my shoulder, "I think you're ready for the next level of treatment." My heart raced as he led me to a back room I'd never noticed before. The air was thick with incense, and in the center stood a table with various vials and powders. "What is this?" I asked, my mouth dry. "This," Dr. Reeves said with a smile, "is the key to true freedom." Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The late-night meetings, the secretive whispers, the hollow-eyed looks of some group members. This wasn't a support group. It was a recruitment center. I backed away, my head spinning. "You're getting them hooked again," I whispered in horror. Dr. Reeves's face hardened. "We're helping them transcend," he said, "and now it's your turn." As he reached for me, I bolted. I ran through the community center, past confused group members, out into the cold night air. Behind me, I could hear shouts and footsteps. I didn't stop running until I reached home, locking the door behind me. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You can't escape who you really are, Alex. We'll be waiting when you're ready to embrace the truth." My hands shook as I deleted the message. I'd come so close to throwing everything away, all because I trusted the wrong person. So here's a word of advice from someone who barely made it out. Be careful who you turn to for help, because sometimes the people who claim to be your saviors are the ones who'll drag you down to hell. As for me, I'm starting over, again. But this time, I'm doing it on my own terms. Because the scariest addiction of all? It's not drugs or alcohol. It's the blind faith we put in others to fix us. Stay safe out there, and remember, the only person who can truly change you is yourself. Everything else, it's just another hit waiting to happen.
Thanks for joining us in the shadows tonight. If you enjoyed these chilling tales, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories every week. Have you got a story of your own? Share it in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And remember, the darkness holds many secrets. Are you brave enough to uncover them? Until next time, keep your lights on and your doors locked. Sweet nightmares.